Hi everybody. You should have already watched the video with the birdie and the puppy dog about angles of elevation and depression, so you should know at this point that angles of elevations are when you're looking upward and angles of depression are when you're looking downward. And both of these types of angles start by looking at eye level, which is going to be our horizontal line. Okay, so this horizontal line right here, I'm going to color it blue. This comes from being eye level to our person, okay? So this is eye level, or it's a horizontal line. And that horizontal line is definitely going to be parallel to the ground. And then inside right here, we call this an angle of elevation. So this inside right here, that's the angle of elevation. And then this line that's right here is an imaginary line. It's not actually drawn. Just like our eyesight, our eye level line is not drawn, this line right here is not drawn either. It's called a line of sight. Okay? And so the line of sight is what creates this line that helps to make the bottom and the tops of the angle. So the angle is made up of your eye level line that's parallel to the ground and your line of sight line that's looking at the object, whatever you're looking at. And this one's an angle of elevation. So an angle of elevation is the angle between the horizontal line, which is really just your eye level, and the line of sight to an object when looking upward. So angle of elevation is up. You can think about elevation as like an elevator takes you up. So elevation elevates you from the ground. Okay. So this box right here is just going to talk about that new phrase that we just learned about, which is line of sight. So the line of sight is just an imaginary line from your eye level that your eyes follow to the object. So sometimes when you're looking up, and sometimes your line of sight is going to be when you're looking downward. Alright, so now let's look at this bottom one. This is going to be an angle of, we're looking downward, so it's depression. And this angle of depression is basically, you've got your horizontal line, and this time it's on top because we're looking down. Okay, so our horizontal line up here was on the bottom because we were looking up, and our horizontal line here is going to be on the top because we're looking down. Okay, this arrow is pointing to our angle of depression. And then lastly, we've got this line here from the airplane down to the car, and that's going to be our line of sight. Line of sight. Okay, so an angle of depression is the angle between the horizontal and the line of sight to an object when looking down. Okay, so depression means we're looking down. Okay, so horizontal line's on top here, horizontal line is on bottom here. And what we know is that if we drew another horizontal line down here, we would have parallel lines, top and bottom, and so then we would end up having this angle congruent to this angle down here by alternate interior angles, and that's what the video showed before as well. So our angle of elevation and angle of depression, so this would be our angle of depression, is actually going to be congruent to the angle of elevation from the car looking at the plane. Those would be the same angles. Okay? Alright, so let's open it up and we're going to look at a couple of examples. So in our first example, it says find the angle of elevation of the sun when a 12.5 meter tall telephone pole casts an 18 meter long shadow. So one of the most important parts is drawing a picture. So here is our picture, and here is our horizontal line right here, and here is our line of sight right here to the sun, and they want to know this angle of elevation here. Remember, when we're finding an angle, we're going to use the inverse ones. So when we're using SOHCAHTOA, we're going to use sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse to figure out what we're going to use. So here, this is our angle of interest, and across from it is opposite. I should put my O, not next to the M. Let's put it underneath, is opposite. And below it is adjacent. So we have opposite and adjacent, and if we looked at our SOHCAHTOA, we looked at our phrase SOHCAHTOA again, which one uses opposite and adjacent? We've got opposite here, we've got adjacent here, but this one has both of them. So we're going to use TOA, and we're going to use tangent inverse. Now remember, when we use tangent inverse, because we're looking for this angle, we're going to put our fraction inside the parentheses. So this will be 12.5 over 18 equals our angle theta. Okay? Don't forget, when you're using your calculator, that you need to make sure that your calculator is set to degrees, okay? Whenever they're reset, they automatically go back to radians. We don't want that. So to use degrees, don't forget you push this mode button right here, and it'll change it. You can just go down and highlight degrees. So we type in tangent inverse of 12.5 over 18, and you could just type it in as divided by 18. And that gets you 34.777. So if we're going to round this to the nearest hundredth, it'd be 34.78. Okay, so theta is about 34.78 degrees. Okay. All right, number 2. Lisa is standing at the bottom of a hill. So we're following this problem, and we're like, oh, we have no picture, so we're going to draw a picture. So we're going to draw Lisa at the bottom of the hill. There she is. And here's our hill. Okay? And it says the angle of elevation from her to the top of the hill is 64 degrees. So remember, to create an angle of elevation, you need two things. You need a line of sight and a horizontal line. So the horizontal line this time is going to be your ground. And your line of sight is going to be that imaginary line to the top of the hill. Okay, it says the angle of elevation from her to the top of the hill is 64 degrees. So here's your angle of elevation. You're going to write 64 degrees inside. It says that the hill is 79 feet tall. So we're going to put our 79 feet right here, because that tells us how tall the hill is. How long is the path up the hill? So we're just going to pretend like the path up the hill is straight and not curvy like I drew. So we're going to put X right here on the path up the hill. Not here. This is the distance between their feet and the middle or the top of the hill. But we want to know the path up the hill. So that's this part right here. So we're looking for the path up the hill. Okay? Notice how, as I was reading the problem, I'm interpreting what the words are saying and drawing a picture. You have to have a picture in order for these to work. So we've got SOHCAHTOA. All right, let's look and see what we have. 64 degrees, this is going to be opposite, and this is going to be hypotenuse. So we have opposite and hypotenuse, so which one of the three are we going to use? We're going to use sine. So remember, this is not sine inverse because they gave us the measure of the angle. So this is sine of 64 degrees equals, and then we're going to make our fraction. Opposite is 79, and hypotenuse is x. Remember, with this, you're going to cross multiply. So you're going to put sine of 64 over 1, cross multiply. So we've got 79 times 1, which is 79, equals, and then this is x sine of 64. Remember, to solve this, you divide by sine of 64 on both sides. So x is about, and we type this fraction right here on our calculator because this side canceled out. So 79 divided by sine of 64. And that's 87.895. So this rounds to, if I'm talking about the money, 89 cents turns into 90 cents because that 5 right there at the end. So this is 87.90. And it's feet. Okay. All right, example 3. It says, a deer is standing 42 feet from the base of a 75-foot tall tree. All right, so I need to draw a deer. You're going to laugh. Here's his 4 legs. Here's his head. Got some antlers. He's pretty good. He's not so shabby. I'll give him a face. Okay. And he got a little tiny tail. Okay. So, a deer is standing 42 feet from the base of a 75-foot tall tree. So here's my tree. It only branches up here, you know. Okay, so 75 feet tall. What is the angle of elevation from her to a squirrel sitting at the top of the tree? So remember, we're going to actually say our horizontal is going to be on the ground. So our line of sight is going to start on the ground to the top of the tree. And there's a squirrel up here in the tree. There's his little tail and his feet. Okay, he's looking up at the squirrel. Okay, so what is the angle of elevation? So here's the angle of elevation. That's what we're looking for, right? So we're going to have to use inverse because they're asking us to find the angle of elevation. So once again, is it SOHCA or TOA? Well, here's the angle. This is opposite. This is adjacent. And TOA uses opposite and adjacent. So we're going to say tangent inverse of, and now we put our fraction inside, 75 over 42 equals our theta, and we just type this in onto our calculator. So second tangent inverse, 75 divided by 42, and that's 60.751, which rounds to just 75 cents. So our theta is about 60.75 degrees. These are word problems, so we need to make sure that our numbers have a measurement besides them, like degrees or feet or whatever they're doing. Okay? All right. Moving on. Says, example 1 on the next page. And we drew a picture for you here. A ski run is 1,000 yards long. So this is the ski run, okay? And it has a vertical drop of 208 yards. So what that's meaning is, from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill, we dropped 208 yards. Find the angle of depression from the top of the ski run to the bottom. So they want you to find this angle right here. Now, the reason that I mentioned earlier about angle of depression and angle of elevation and them being congruent is for problems like these. Because we know this angle, we know this measurement right here, and we know this 208 yards. Now you could just draw that 208 yards over here and solve your problem, okay? But you could also notice that this angle right here is always going to be congruent to that angle right there, okay? So bottom line is our 208 is going to be opposite. Even if I drew it here, it's opposite. If I drew it here, it's opposite, okay? So we've got opposite, and then the 1,000 yards, that's our hypotenuse. So if I look at SOHCA, which one uses opposite over hypotenuse? That's SO. Okay? And we're looking for an angle, so we're going to use sine inverse. And now we're going to write our fraction. Opposite is 208, and hypotenuse is 1,000. So that equals our theta, and then you just type it on your calculator. Second sine inverse of 208 divided by 1,000, and that's 12.005. So if I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth, that means that second zero is going to turn into a 1. Excuse me, because of the 5 after it. So 12.01, and we're finding an angle, so we have to put degrees. Okay? All right. Number 2 says the angle of depression from a fisherman on top of a cliff. So let's draw our cliff. Here's our fisherman. Oh, he might have a fishing pole, right? Okay, there we go, with a line. There's the fisherman. He is, let's see, 320 feet from the base of the cliff. Oh, sorry. The angle of depression from a fisherman on top of a cliff. So we're going to go ahead and put our horizontal line here. And it says to a boat. I forgot, I didn't see the boat part, sorry. To a boat. So we're into our boat down here. There's our boat. 320 feet from the base of the cliff. So 320 feet is 27 degrees. So in other words, here's our line of sight going down to our boat. Okay, where's our angle of depression? Is it here or is it here? Remember, our angle of depression is going to be in between the horizontal line that we drew and the line of sight. So it's going to be right here in between the two dotted lines. Okay, so this is our angle of depression, and it says that angle of depression is 27 degrees. So we're going to put that there. Okay, and they want to know how tall is the cliff. Okay, so we can think of it the same way we did as before. We could imagine that we are looking for x here on this side, and that would mean that x is opposite. Or we know that these two angles are supposed to be congruent, so we're looking for x here for how high the cliff is. Okay, regardless, x is going to be opposite, and 320 is going to be adjacent. So, if I'm using SOHCAHTOA, we've got opposite and adjacent, which would mean I'm using tangent. So, we know the angle is 27 degrees, so we're going to use regular tangent. Tangent of 27 degrees equals, and we write our fraction, x over 320. I like it when x is on top, because then that just means that I have a real easy one to solve. X equals 320 tangent of 27. Now remember, all you have to do is type 320, then type tangent, and then type 27, parentheses, and you get your number. So it's 163.04, and that 4 is going to turn into a 5 because of the 8 after the 4. Okay? So the height of the tower is 163.05 feet. I'm sorry, it's not a tower, it's a cliff. I should get my problems right.